Europa Universalis 4. It's a name you've known for a long time, and part of a series that goes back over 20 years. And even though my first meeting with Paradox was through Crusader Kings 2, it feels to me like the EU series is what Paradox is at its core, and it's from where most of the other games take their core inspiration. At least to me, EU4 has symbolized that pillar of Paradox where history and a strong vision arguably stand the strongest. I mean, think about it. The Crusader Kings series, while being grand strategy, is the rather wacky younger brother. And whereas Hearts of Iron 4 feels like the drunken uncle who sometimes imparts sound wisdom, but more often than not keeps yapping about the what-if scenarios non-stop, Stellaris comes across as a somewhat aloof cousin. A cousin who likes to have fun, sure, when she whips out the board game, but who keeps making friends and enemies with the weirdest people and animals. In this group of lovable ragtags, EU4 is to me the baseline, the measurement against which everything else is measured, the stable mind that may comprehend anything and yet acts mostly on a rational basis, even though it sometimes likes to take its chances. EU4 doesn't offer the magic and mysticism and crazy moments of CK2 and 3, it doesn't offer a world in which the span of a 10-year period, everything can change and some rando man with a Balkan way about him suddenly rules half the world, and it doesn't make you choose between being overly nice or genocidal to your neighbors. Now I am being deliberately facetious here. I love all of these games because of their different styles, but I wish to make my point clear. It stands to reason that EU4 is Paradox's golden child simply by virtue of being a game that actually takes itself seriously. It's a game that, despite spanning 400 years and an untold number of unique peoples and cultures, opts to look at what's possible and plausible or even imaginable rather than something out of this world. It's a game where the most crazy thing known to man is the ascendancy of Ulm, or perhaps Byzantium, instead of immortality, or that the Wehrmacht could function entirely without coke.
Tutski. No, thank you though. Key to success in this racket is this little baby right here. It's called cocaine. Right.
I mean, come on, I get that you can rush a war with the USSR and take him by surprise and perhaps even, let's say, don't siege Leningrad, just take it. But keeping this army going without coke? I mean, come on, now we're doing alt history for real for real. You know, my first meeting with EU4 was through Portugal. I had no idea what I was doing, and I sure continued to have no idea for a little while. And definitely never played Portugal again. But no matter what happened, no matter how good I got, the game stayed consistent. When I'm playing as a small state, the fun of staying alive is part of the intense moment-to-moment gameplay, even though I'm just looking at the gosh darn map. As a larger power, you're suddenly a lot bigger and more powerful, but there is of course always a bigger fish. At least until you're the biggest one, but even then, to a very large extent, EU4 remains tough as nails because of everything it throws at you, and because the mechanics it's implemented. Overextension, national unrest, Ottoman decadency, the Holy Roman tug of war, English Civil War, France's comparatively late colonization versus the rest of the West, and its surrounding by possible hostiles, the institutions that will more often than not begin in Europe, which triggers technological development that later in the game threatens to put even mighty China behind in the arms race. This is where EU4's biggest strength lies, in this consistency, in its hopefulness that you'll achieve its various goals and missions and take that step towards a brighter tomorrow, yet simultaneously in its rakish desire to trip you up wherever you go, to make sure a downpour follows a bit of light rain, and to keep adding roadblocks for you to solve your way past. Thing is, EU4 is soon to be 11 years old. That is remarkable longevity for a type of game that normally sees between 1 to 2 years of updates, and arguably even less than that back in the day. A ton has changed in the span of the past decade, but I don't think that EU4's soul has changed at all. If anything, it has been more entrenched, and frankly, that's not something I can say for other games. Whereas CK2 became a bit more supernatural and memeable with time, and the exact same thing happened with Hearts of Iron 4 by the way, EU4 remained the same at heart. We can wonder why, but to a certain extent, I think it might have to do with its focus. Because what Crusader Kings and Hearts of Iron have in common is that they both focus on personalities. And let me tell you what I mean by that. With Crusader Kings it might be obvious. We roleplay as the people on screen, and we give them personalities and they show us who they are, but the options in the game allow us to stumble into wacky situations that are pure Reddit bait. I mean, take a quick look at our shit Crusader Kings say and you'll see exactly what I mean. With Hearts of Iron 4, it is a tad more convoluted, but stay with me. Because here too, our states are firmly represented by the people in charge, only this time they're a lot more modern and historically relevant to our contemporary imaginings. But even further, our states are personalized by ideologies and parties. And I bet you've heard 1,000 times how someone created an anarcho-syndicalist Britain with that one weirdo or other becoming prime minister, and now it's their entire identity. I'm not knocking it, but let's be real, it kind of is what it is at this point. And you know, that is paradox to a large extent, alternate history and all. But turn to EU4 and you quickly find that, inherently, it's very likely the least personifiable paradox game to date. We have kings and other leaders, sure, but they are completely faceless, and despite having just one or two traits, have no real personality. Indeed, even though our states have official religions and preferred primary cultures, it's never as memeable as ideologies and the mustache man. What I find so cool about EU4 in particular is that unless you're like a deity at this game or using cheats, very little if nothing is going to change overnight. If you wish to change your government form from a monarchy to a republic, we're talking a change that spans multiple decades if not centuries. If you are an average to decent and even veteran player, you will face tough times if you're playing factions with disadvantages. Taking wrong steps as even larger powers is a surefire way to get humbled real fast, as I'm sure a lot of Ottoman players have experienced when gobbling up just a few too many Balkan states at a time. In other words, true domination will not happen in the span of an evening, and you won't turn an entire state upside down politically just because you began influencing the public. Sure, it's possible to play religious playthroughs and attempt to spread the word of your lord to all the corners of your burgeoning realm, but if you wish to do so efficiently, you might have to spend half centuries investing into a proper clergy. And if you wish to become that dominant colonial power, foregoing power in other areas is necessary. This is what EU4 is a master at. Of not just risk and reward in that you never know what's actually going to pay off, but in both delaying gratification and making you actually work for it to feel the payoff. A lot has been said about EU4's so-called mana system, and of course to an extent, all strategy games deal with resources or mana of some kind. EU4 uses a rather abstract system of administrative, diplomatic, and military monarch points, which I've always liked and felt work really well. And the reason for this is because of the way they're gained and used. Because at its heart, EU4 is a game about watching numbers go up and down really, and about the accumulation and wise spending of what has been accumulated. EU4 knows exactly how to raise those dopamine levels, because watching those monarch points increase and reach those magic numbers where I can finally unlock either a new technology or a new idea is like being one of those oldies at the casino. It gets the juices flowing, and flow the juices will. And that's without even mentioning how EU4's map continues to stay valid. EU4's campaign was beautiful when it released, and stays stylistic and beautiful even today, despite me personally finding it a lot more beautiful with the use of a simple darkening mod for the oceans here. In many ways, EU4 was that massive leap from CK2's older generation of visuals, and it was the first Paradox game to take that step into the next generation, into graphical fidelity that could hit the mainstream. Speaking of dopamine, spreading those colors around has never been replicated as well since in a vanilla Paradox game, and I have to say, if there is one thing Johan has a grip on, it's that map grip game, because even in Imperator Rome, watching those colors expand is some of the best stuff you've ever seen. For these reasons and more, EU4 continues to stay relevant and beloved, and is only just now starting to see the end of the road. Whether EU5 can take up the mantle and recreate the succulent rush of dopamine as you wield the literal levers of power remains to be seen, but I have faith that it is at least possible. Until then, EU4 will probably forever be the Paradox game, the title that brought so many into this series and became the reason why they stayed, and continue to be the benchmark for what a Paradox game can hope to become. Let me know what you think of EU4, its legacy, and this video in the comments, and please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!